Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the very last round of the Apex Rear Wing DRM Championship. Tonight, we will crown a champion, and it will be either Goofball Antics or Ziras, the battle of the BMW 320s. This time last week, we still had 3 drivers in the hunt, but Sam Smith was eliminated from contention in dramatic fashion when he crashed into the back of Resist while they were leading the race last week, putting both of them out of the race on the spot. What was Sam and Resist's misfortune turned out to be Goofball Antics' fortune, as he found himself in 2nd place from what would have been 4th place. Goof now finds himself with a 14-point advantage over the defending champion Ziras. Tonight, to call the action as we crown a new Apex Rear Wing champion, my name's Stairs, and I'm delighted to welcome back Matt Dunlop for the final time this series.
Hello, Stairs, and hello to everybody watching on at home, around the world, wherever you may be. Welcome to the Circuit International Ayrton Senna, one of many circuits in Brazil named after the late great Ayrton Senna, of course. This one is also known as the Salvador Street Circuit, raced primarily by the Stock Car Brazil Championship since 2009. It's proven to be quite popular to drivers, despite its incredibly narrow nature, as we're going to see today, is going to catch quite a few drivers out with just how close some of these walls are to some of these fast bends and these tight chicanes. It's going to be a ripping race.
Absolutely, and well, the last time we had a proper street circuit in Belle Isle was Goofball Antics, who was the victor, and the Porsches didn't do so well. Let's have a quick look at the points situation as we head into this final round, and as I mentioned, 14-point lead for Goofball Antics. That means that if he finishes in the top 4, regardless of what Ziras does, Goofball Antics will be champion. Many other permutations, we'll go through them as we see fit. Sam Smith, of course, eliminated in that crash last week, as we detailed earlier on the broadcast, because he is now 30 points adrift of Goofball Antics, with 25 as the maximum available points tonight. Madbird in 4th place, tied on points with Brenton Foley, ahead by virtue of his 2nd place finish at Belle Isle, and Foley's best is a 3rd. Tonight will prove the tiebreaker between those two. Berto not here tonight, and he will go no higher. He sits on 93 points as Resist, very, very unluckily down there in 7th place due to a number of DNFs, most of which I believe not his fault, and he is just 1 point ahead of Roadhog, so he'll be aiming to jump up into at least 6th place. He won't be able to catch Madbird or Foley because they are 25 points ahead of him. Nether in 9th, and Pablo rounds out the top 10. Those two also tied on 66 points apiece, with Nether ahead by virtue of the countback.
So it is Goofball Antics leading the way in the championship standings by a margin of 14 points over Ziras, 2 of the BMW 320 drivers. And at the moment, as you can see, they are currently leading the standings in the practice session 1 and 2, with only a few minutes left to go. Don't let that counter at the top deceive you. Due to some server issues we were having earlier on, the practice session is slated to run for a little bit longer than it normally will, but we will be starting our qualifying at around the same time we normally do, which should be in about 5 minutes. And at the moment, Ziras is currently sitting just over a second clear of Goofball Antics, courtesy of one flying lap he put on last time out. Before that, they were pretty close. I think the margin was about 0.4 of a second between the two, until Ziras found something that works for him. He may have found a new line, found a new setup adjustment. Maybe he's in the pits adjusting some more things at the moment, but he's currently up a whole second over Goofball Antics. So that could prove to be decisive in the championship if Goofball isn't able to finish as high as he would like to. This track is going to be quite difficult for overtaking, so if Goofball has a bad qualifying session, that's going to cause quite a few issues.
Well, very, very important for Ziras, as he is exactly where he needs to be. He has to win. There's absolutely, realistically no other option, because there are permutations where Ziras can win if he doesn't win the championship, if he doesn't win this race. But it makes it a lot easier for him if he does win. It puts the pressure on Goofball Antics, means that Goofball has to finish 4th or better. If he finishes 5th and Ziras wins the race, then Ziras will be the champion. So Ziras is putting the pressure on. Goofball Antics can't afford something to happen to him like happened to Resist last week, getting clouted from behind. And of course, we've got a couple of drivers here, such as Bagsy, who are returning after a bit of a hiatus. So there's some people who aren't quite as comfortable in these cars as everyone else has become during the course of the last 9 rounds. So very fitting that we see the 2 championship leaders at the top of the leaderboard as we head towards the end of this practice session. It promises to be an absolute belter.
If you're wondering what car Josh Bagsy is driving here today at the Salvador circuit, it is indeed the number 13 Lex Schuppenrennen Pink Pig Porsche that's normally steered by Berto. But as Berto is still out and will not be able to contest this race due to his holiday that he's on at the moment, that car is free for use for anybody who wants to grab it. So Josh Bagsy, in his wildcard appearance, I guess you could call it, is jumping behind the wheel of that Porsche 935. And it's not a car he's very used to. He's still trying to get to grips with it. I think he's just trying to find some setups at the moment that'll work for him. And he'll be going out and qualifying pretty soon with not very much knowledge about this car.
Yeah, he's only stepped into it for the first time about 5 minutes ago. Did a little bit of practice, and when I say a little bit, like a lap and a half in the Lancia, which was slated as the guest car, but last minute change as he jumps in as Sam Smith's teammate. Maybe he'll be hoping for a little bit of advice from Sam Smith, the guy who's won 3 races in that car, and his teammate Berto, who's been absent for the previous 4 rounds, also won a couple of races in that car and 4 pole positions. So it's no doubting its credentials, but of course Bagsy wouldn't be expected to be challenging for the win with only a couple of minutes worth of experience in the car itself.
Yeah, it'd be miraculous if he was able to. And while that Porsche 935 is on paper the quickest car in the field, of course, having much more horsepower than most other vehicles that it's competing against, this circuit does not have very many long straight sections. There's a lot of tight corners, there's a lot of long steady state corners, and this is going to be the track on the calendar of all the circuits we've visited so far in ARW Season 8 that is going to suit the BMW 320s the most, because it's such a light car. You can get the acceleration down quick, you can get the traction through the tyres quick, you can accelerate out of the corners. Not as fast as one of the more powerful cars, of course, but you're not going to be losing as much momentum through the corners, and it's going to be, well, you can see now the result of that is Goofball Antics is currently running in second, and that's a position we haven't seen him running in a practice session for quite some time, have we, Stairs?
Yeah, it looks like he's prepared for this round, knows that there's a lot on the line here, and he's very much in the box seat to take the championship as Resist actually jumps into second place. But a big disadvantage that Resist will have in that BMW M1 is that it's expected that Porsches and the BMW M1s will have to make a pit stop, as they did in Belle Isle. Cannot do it without making a pit stop, whereas the BMW 320s and maybe even the Ford Capris, with a bit of assistance from a safety car, will be able to do this race on a no-stop. That was what allowed Goofball Antics to win the race in Belle Isle, which had a massive crash at the first chicane. Just trying to see who that is. Looks like it was
Resist, I think.
No, I think it was Red and White. I believe it was Foley. But that doesn't really matter because it's the end of the practice session, and obviously he knew that and was just having a bit of fun. So there's a bit of a calm now. We're going to get qualifying underway very, very shortly indeed.
So the first cab off the rank, once qualifying does get underway, will be Josh Bagsy, as we mentioned earlier, in Berto's Lex Schuppenrennen Pink Pig Porsche 935. They're all sitting in the paddock at the moment before they depart onto what is a very oddly shaped pit lane, I must say. Obviously not a huge amount of space they can deal with the track designers in real life, of course, here at the Salvador circuit. So they have to make use of a street that departs off the side, perpendicular to turn 1. So it runs up the street, doubles back and comes down for the exit. So they all managed to squeeze into a relatively small lot, and it will be Rody. My apologies, I wasn't sure if Bagsy was able to set a lap time in practice, and he has. So Rody in the Ford Capri, the Blair Witch Rennsport, will be the first car out of the pit lane.
Yeah, so Rody, so far this season, best qualifying of 8th, which came in Hollowham, which was a race where the qualifying session was beset by people shortcutting the track. A little bit less of an issue with a lot of the corners here because of the walls that encircle much of the circuit, but there are a few chicanes, and those will certainly be an opportunity to track cut. And one track cut, and that's it. That is the way these qualifying sessions work. You only have one lap to do your lap time. The drivers will go out in the reverse order from which they set their times in practice, so the slowest start the session and the fastest end the session. They get one chance, and if they have a corner cut, that is the end of their lap.
The biggest hotspot for corner cuts on this track is going to be that final chicane on the main straight, because there's no raised curbs like there are at the chicane we just saw Rody go through. It's just sausages on the inside on plain tarmac. So if you shortcut that, which is very easy to do at high speed, you'll lose your lap time with meters to go before the start-finish straight. So that could be absolutely heartbreaking. So Rhodey's coming up towards the chicane now. He's just powered out of that final hairpin. Jumps on the brakes roundabout now. This is the chicane. So you've got a left. You want to try and mount these curbs as much as you can, but not too much. He's come through now and he crosses the line to start his flying lap. Or as they say in Portuguese, something else. I don't speak the language. He's going through turn 1 now, racing past a pit exit, which is going to be a very tricky spot due to the wall protruding out there. The car will want to drift out to the edges of the track as he power through turn 1, but he's looking pretty clean so far at the moment. Going through a fast right-hander now. Brake on the brakes now into one of the first big overtaking zones of this track. His first sector time is an 18.123. Oh, gets very leery on the exit of that bend there. Has a big run up now towards the first chicane, and this is going to be a very tricky chicane. You have to be quite careful to, one, get your braking marker. And he's straight into the fence on the exit there.
Carried way too much speed in there. Yeah, carried way too much speed. Wasn't getting it stopped, and has had to find reverse. So that was looking like a decent lap. He was very much pushing that Ford Capri throughout the first part of that lap, and just cooked it a little bit into that corner. These sweepers are going to be very, very tricky on these tyres. It is a street circuit, but there are highways a lot of these roads.
Yeah, they really are. There's a few unexpected bumps lying in certain parts around this circuit. And you see that curb on the corner that Rhodey's going through now. There's one like that on that chicane he just failed to navigate, but it's a lot steeper, so you cannot hit that curb under any circumstances on that last chicane, or you will go upside down. I know, I've done it in practice quite a bit. 1 minute 19.602 is the benchmark set by Rhodey.
Important thing about that last chicane is that it is actually before the start-finish line, so we're seeing Tyrrell come to start his lap there. That's actually going to serve as the first corner when we actually race, so the grid is prior to that corner, and that'll certainly sort everyone out.
Yeah, that'll definitely separate the men from the boys around that first lap. And then the first laps have always been quite hairy around a few of these layouts, and this circuit will be no different at all. Tyrrell's down half a second in the first sector, so Rhodey obviously clicked with that first sector in the Ford Capri, and Tyrrell's not been able to match that so far. He powers out of that corner there, going through one of these long sweepers, as you described earlier, into this first chicane. So he's not carrying a huge amount of speed through here. He's very careful on the brakes, trying to make sure he doesn't send the thing up on two wheels on the exit of that chicane. But he's not looking super quick at the moment as he goes through the Curva do Dende on the run down towards Vittoria. And due to that mistake, he is up 7.5 seconds at the moment. So long straight, jump on the anchors here onto the Curva di Vittoria, which is a fairly standard hairpin. Will be a great overtaking chance. There's a lot of runoff there. So a little bit of forgiveness if you get your line a little bit wrong, and it gives an invitation for drivers to pull some interesting lines. Now, Tyrrell comes into the final chicane now, touches the curbs, and he's through with a 1 minute 11.335.
Yeah, good lap there from Tyrrell. Enjoyed that one. Although he was a little bit slower than Rhodey in the first sector, he knew that Rhodey had made an error on his lap, and that lap time came back to him. Now, Bagsy taking a fair bit more curb on that first chicane, which is, the last chicane. So this is actually not his flying lap. That wasn't on his flying lap yet, but it gives you a bit of an idea of what sort of line he's planning to take on his actual flying lap. And we'll see if it gives him a track cut for it. But so far, he's 5/10 down on the time set by Tyrrell now. And we saw Tyrrell was already down on the time set by Rhodey. So this is interesting times for Bagsy. Still coming to grips with this car.
Yeah, I think he's still coming to grips with the track as well. The line he took for that first chicane was not ideal in any sense of the word. He looks to be pretty good through this chicane at the moment. Just nicks the curb on the inside, so that's the line you want to aim for. But he can't carry a huge amount of pace around this circuit in the Porsche 935. Obviously, it really wants to get all those 849 horsepowers down to the road, and he's up 3/4 of a tenth at the moment. So he has found a little bit of time in that second sector, and will continue to find some more in the third. But he doesn't know a huge amount about this car. I'm not sure how much of a chance he's had to play with setups. So he hasn't probably been able to shorten the gear ratios as much as he would have liked. It'll still be quicker on paper than a Ford Capri, but he's going through that final chicane now, and he's taken a very, very interesting line there. I'd say he's got a track cut. Yeah. He's thrown it away.
And that's a shame because he probably would have been up. He had a little bit of an opportunity in that Porsche to just stretch his legs on the way down to and out of turn 5. It must be an incredibly frustrating car to drive on this circuit because you just can never really unleash the full potential that it has, and you keep having to brake for corners. as we now turn our attention to Madbird, who is setting the timing screens alight. 1.5 seconds up through the first sector.
Yeah, Madbird had a couple of interesting moments, a few big oversteer slides through the practice session, but I reckon he's used those to his advantage, and he's got a pretty good feel of how this track behaves and how the Ford Capri behaves around this track. So he's really making hay while the sun shines at the moment, putting down some great lap times.
It's been an incredible lap now, 3.5 seconds to the second sector split. So he is giving us a real representative lap time now. The second of the Ford Capris that we've seen so far. We've still got a number of them yet to go tonight. They're by far the most popular car in this session, and 4.8 seconds ahead of Tyrrell. Madbird jumps into provisional pole on a 106.4.
Yeah, that final chicane is going to be very interesting to see how all these drivers decide to tackle it. As we see now, Roadhog goes through, and he's not taking a fantastic line through there. You've got to be careful not to mount those sausage curbs too much, because although you may not get a track cut, you will get wheels up in the air, and that will limit your traction and your ability to put power down on the run out of that chicane. He's hugging that apex nice and tight through the Curvados Orixas, as we were debating earlier in the group chat as how it's pronounced. We're still struggling with our corner names at the moment.
Yes.
Our Portuguese is a bit dusty, but he's up 0.018. Oh, that's a big slide on the exit. He's going to lose a bit of time there.
Got up on the curb on the inside there. That's what happened.
Yeah, he certainly did. He may lose a bit of time there, but Roadhog is still looking pretty nice in the early stage, although he's very wobbly. He wasn't too stable on the brakes into that chicane there, so he's going through the Curvados Dende now.
I don't think he's stable at any part of the corner. Corner entry, corner exit, and mid-corner as well, and that's really, really going to cost him now as he gets one mother of a tank slapper out of that turn 4 sweeper and cannot hang on to it. And that is a nasty, nasty accident there for Roadhog. He probably still finish ahead of Roadie because he kept the thing facing in the correct direction.
Yeah, he didn't hit the walls as much as I thought he was going to, which is surprising. It's a 1 minute 12.443, so obviously he's lost a lot of time. But he did very well to make sure that accident wasn't as bad as it could have been. So now we've got Desamaj out on track, about to come up towards the main straight now. No, he's quite a bit far back on his outlap. So Desamaj is still roaming around the halfway point of this circuit at the moment, not too far till he comes around. It is a relatively short lap, this track, so we're going to see quite a few laps in the race, which is, of course, 55 minutes plus 1 lap once the leader crosses the finish line at the end of a lap's time. So we're going to be seeing close to around 50 laps total, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less once the race finishes. So that's going to be a very long... the drivers will be very well acclimatized to these corners, is what I'm trying to say.
A lot of traffic. That'll also be an issue as Desamaj starts his lap. Freshly back from holiday, sat out last week as he was on holiday, and let's see whether he comes back fresh or whether the lack of sleep overnight will hamper his concentration somewhat. Hasn't had a huge amount of opportunity to practice by his own admission, but he's not too far away from the pace so far in the first sector.
Yeah, the margin in the first sector is 0.069, so that's pretty much negligible as far as I'm concerned. So he's looking pretty good in that Porsche 935 so far. And these straight sections coming up in Sector 2 and Sector 3 are really going to enable him to pull ahead a bit more of a margin over Madbird in that Ford Capri. It's going to be a bit hard to maintain the weight transfer around this long sweeping right-hander, the Curvados Dende. And he's down almost 3/10 now as a result of that. But I reckon he'll claw back quite a bit of that time in this final sector. He jumps on the anchors now into the Curva di Vittoria. He's run very deep. Yeah, he's missed his apex by quite a bit. Did
not trouble the apex at all.
So he's coming through the final chicane now. How's his line? It's looking pretty good, actually. Carried a bit of speed. Second. Margin of 0.2 of a second. But that is going to be a difficult chicane for maintaining race pace, because the way you tackle that chicane in qualifying is going to be very different from the way you tackle it during the race. Brenton Foley now coming through to start his flying lap, gets very close to the pit exit on the one out there. That's going to be an interesting situation, that pit exit, because it's right on the racing line as cars slide out of turn 1, and hopefully that won't cause any incidents. Yeah,
a bit of a dangerous pit exit. Communication will be key. They're coming from a very low speed in that pit lane. It was a speed limit of 40 kilometers an hour, and that is much, much slower than we had last week, where it was up around 200. So we're going from potentially our fastest pit lane speed limit to our slowest pit lane speed limit in 2 weeks' time. Now, Foley is up here. I'm very interested in the way Decimage finished his lap out of that chicane. He actually lost the back end, but because the start-finish line was so close, it didn't really matter because he still went across it even if he spun immediately afterwards. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see Foley do that too, as he goes again very, very deep, like Decimage did, into that turn 5 hairpin.
Yeah, it's going to change the tactics that you use for that chicane. He's going to... Let's see what he does now.
No
no
way.
Track cut there for sure. Yep,
Yeah.
he has. That's a
Way
big shame
too
for
much
Brenton
speed.
Foley. We always love to see his lap times, and he was almost 6/10 up at the second split. And although he's very fantastic to watch in terms of sliding the car all over the place, he also posts some pretty good lap times as well, considering how aggressively he drives that car. So we always like to see him get a lap time, as we like to see all these drivers get lap times on the board during qualifying. Unfortunately, not to be for Brenton Foley, as Nether now takes to the track in his Porsche 935 to see what he can do.
Foley didn't have a great qualifying last week and still managed to finish a number of positions up from where he started. Although right now, Madbird will be quite happy because it serves him well in his battle with Foley. They're both tied on points, as we detailed earlier on the broadcast. So Madbird, if he finishes ahead of Foley, will finish ahead of him in the championship. Foley will have a lot of work to do to reverse the fortunes there. Now, Nether is on a pretty good lap himself. He has found a fair bit of pace in the last part of this championship and has just steadily been improving his results race after race. Finished 4th last week, and he's a second up on this lap.
So he's just coming through the final hairpin now. He's looking pretty good so far. It's 1 minute on the clock at the moment. He's coming to the final chicane now. Oh, he's just got that line just about where he wants it. He's up 1.6 seconds. So Nether takes pole position provisionally with about 7 or 8 cars having taken to the track at the moment. So that's a very great lap time from Nether there. As Sam Smith now crosses the start-finish line to start his flying lap.
Nether did the same thing Decimage did, just losing control out of that final chicane, but he was a little bit more cautious than Foley through there. Didn't get the track cut, and 104.7. Now the benchmark. Sam Smith was looking like he may well be one of the drivers in contention for the championship as we headed into the round last week, but not to be, as he knocked himself out of contention, crashing into the back of Resist. He's got a lot of work to do today to just try and get another win on the board, get the bragging rights of most wins. He's tied currently with Ziras for most wins, 3 apiece. Championship leader on 1 win.
His first sector wasn't particularly fantastic though, Sam Smith. He was down almost a half a second on Nether's time. He's brought about 2.5 tenths back on that, but he's run incredibly wide of that final hairpin there. That's catching a lot of drivers out in terms
Is there a
of lap
magnet
time.
on the outside wall there? seems
I'd say-
like no
I'd
one's
say there
going
must
here.
be.
Nah,
And he's going to
nah.
straight line to chicane. He's going to tip it over on the start-finish line, and he's going to absolutely bin his qualifying lap. So
Absolutely.
that's a huge shame.
Did not ever look like making that corner. It just the car, he probably turned the steering wheel full lock, but front wheels did not want to know about it.
Yeah, I didn't realise you could actually roll a car over there at this point of the circuit. You can definitely do it at the first chicane, but the second chicane, that's the first time I've seen that. So that really shows you how aggressive those sausage curves are. You can really see them there. They really look like giant hot dogs the way they're painted even. But Goofball Antics now crosses the start-finish line, rolls through turn 1 to start his lap in the BMW 320. We're expecting this to be something special.
Yeah, now, here is a very interesting conundrum for Goofball Antics. Do you go all out, balls to the wall, and try and get a pole position? Or do you just put a conservative lap out there, knowing that a lot of very fast guys have made errors, Foley, Sam Smith, for example, and they will be starting from the back, so you just want to finish ahead of Nether or thereabouts so that you can make your bid for 4th place or better and just bring that championship home.
He'll want to be a little bit conservative, of course, but not too much. He's going to know that there's a few of these issues around the track, especially that last chicane where he can just throw away a whole lap in one fell swoop. But he's up 4 tenths at the moment, so he's looking pretty good so far. So he's got some time to play with. So he can take that chicane a little bit slower if he wants to. He's just going to have to focus, make sure he hits it right, doesn't get his braking marker wrong. He's looking pretty good at the moment. He's taken that very easy, crosses the line.
Too
he's
easy.
second.
Yeah, he took it a little bit too conservatively, actually, whereas Nether took a fair bit of curb, carried a fair bit of speed through there, and also had the benefit of that Porsche power down those 2 straights. Goofball Antics coughed up that 4/10 of a second advantage that he had through the second sector with a mixture of those factors.
Yeah, we normally expect Goofball Antics to be a qualifying specialist as he was in the last season of ARW, but he's not done super well there, so he'll be kicking himself about that. But we have seen that qualifying can be fairly inconsequential depending on how well you do in the race, and of course with pit strategy, which we know that Goofball Antics excels at. But now Resist is out on track. He's up 2/10 at the first sector as he goes through the first chicane now, and this lap's looking pretty good.
It is very, very good so far for Resist. Let me run this stat by you, Matty. The race that he won, and now talking about Goofball Antics, he started from 7th place, and that was also a street circuit, so track position not necessarily that important for him.
There you go, and there's such a tight, twisty circuit as well. It's going to suit the pit strategy of these BMW 320s, so he's going to make up mountains of time in the pit lane, which is going to play to his benefit all the more as Resist crosses the line.
Wow.
Only third, 3/10 and a change down on the time of Goofball Antics. So not the best time we've seen so far from Resist, but there's only so much you can do with that BMW M1 around this track. Speaking of BMWs, we've got the other one now, Ziras, the championship contender at the moment. Oh, he's tagged the wall through that right-hand kink there. He probably hasn't lost too much time, actually. No. As a matter of fact, he's up 4/10 of a second. Looking pretty good so far.
This is very interesting because up to this point in the season, only Porsche 935 turbos have been on pole position. All of them so far for the Black Rennen team, shared between Sam Smith and Berto. Nether currently finds himself in provisional pole position, but not if Ziras has anything to say about it, and he could have bragging rights for the only BMW 320 to sit on pole position if he can bring it home from here. But we saw how strong Nether was in the final sector, and Goofball Antics coughed up a 4/10 of a second advantage in the final sector on his lap. Will Ziras do likewise, or will Nether hang on?
That line wasn't too great through that final hairpin there, and he got a little bit up on 2 wheels in the first chicane as well. Let's see how he does through the second chicane. That's almost a track cut. No, he's got it across the line. He's on pole with 7/10 of a second to spare. Great lap time from Ziras, and he will be starting from P1 for the final race of the season, with his main championship contender 2 spots behind him on the grid.
And that means that Ziras does not go an entire season without setting a pole position. I believe that would have been the first time that it happened if he didn't get that pole position today. But congratulations to him. He's added to his pole tally, and he'll be very, very pleased. He's exactly where he needs to be.
The stage is now set for what is going to be a thrilling championship showdown. Both of these guys are going to be making sure they stay completely and utterly out of trouble on the start, because you can certainly not win a race or a championship off the start, but you can very well lose them. We will have a 10-minute warm-up session before we get started with the race, of course, which gives the drivers a little bit more time to familiarise themselves with the track if they're relatively new, such as Bagsy in that Porsche 935. And it also gives all the drivers to practice their standing starts, which are going to be pretty interesting at this circuit.
Yeah, speaking of interesting, the exit of the pit lane has been a lot of donuts, a lot of smoke, and a lot of people having fun. It's an interesting pit exit because the garages are actually on the other side, facing away from the circuit, so they've got to go up basically through the paddock area, turn around, then come through the pit lane and come out of that dangerous pit exit you mentioned earlier on in the broadcast.
Yeah, there'll be discussion in the group chat for sure between these drivers about proper etiquette through that corner. If there's any incidents there, they'll be very closely looked at, and that could also have championship implications. Touch wood, of course, that it doesn't come to that, and we want to see a nice clean race to decide this title. But anything can happen, and we have seen a few instances where, you know, we've had championship contenders getting caught up in incidents, like we saw last time out, of course. And, Sam Smith, who was sitting third at the time, I believe, in the standings before he wiped himself and Resist out on that final corner, further adding to the bad luck that Resist has been facing the last couple of races. So hopefully that BMW M1 is able to, as we see, Josh Bagsy's created a traffic jam as he's rotated the car at a very narrow part of the circuit there. So Resist will be looking to get his name back on the podium for this final race of the season. A lot of these guys have nothing to lose except Goofball Antics, really, being in that lead of the championship at the moment. They're all starting to grid up for their first practice start now. Yeah,
practice start. For anyone who's just joined the broadcast, we're currently in the warm-up. Ziras has taken his pole position, first pole position of the season. The first by a non-Porsche driver, the first by a non-Black Rennen driver. So he's very, very nicely placed. So they're practicing their start. It's a tight grid. and they want to make sure no incidents whatsoever. Goofball Antics will just be wanting to hopefully get ahead of Nether into that first corner and have an unabated run. And he can just follow Ziras home if he wants to. That would be good enough for him to win the championship. Just on the stats of resist, actually, you were saying before, he's been quite unlucky. 2 DNFs on the trot out of decent positions. Both races where he looked like he would finish on the podium. One because he got tagged by Sam Smith, and the other one due to a power failure, and that coming off the back of the opening round in Brno when he also had a DNF, which was due to a driver error. But 3 DNFs in one season. He could have been so much further up. He'll be wondering what could have been, but he'll also take a lot of confidence into the next season, knowing that he is now a genuine contender.
He certainly will. He's been improving by a great deal over the course of this season. We've been singing praises about him pretty much all season since we started to see those flashes of brilliance shine through in the Caterham Championship last year when he was battling with Ziras, his brother, who of course dominated that series if you were following along last time out in those Caterhams. We saw some great battles between those two, and we knew there was going to be any time soon that Resist was going to find himself up on the podium positions. So he's now in that spot in what you could almost consider an inferior car to some of the others on this grid. It's got similar stats to the Porsche 935, but just a little bit less power and a little bit more weight. So he's able to do some very good things with that BMW M1. Won't be able to do a huge amount, I don't think, around this circuit, mind you, but he'll give it his best, and that's all that matters.
That is right. A little bit hamstrung by its weight, and it will need a pretty hefty drink during the middle of that race. They're gridding up now for a second practice start. We're going to take a break, and on the other side, we'll bring you all of the action from the final round of the Apex Rear Wing DRM Championship. Don't go anywhere. Arguably one of the defining moments of DRM's 14-year history was the sole victory for Schnitzer Motorsport and BMW at the hands of the big Austrian Harald Ertl in 1982. Switching from the Toyota Celica in 1977, Schnitzer returned to the German marque for the 78 season, running the BMW 320 in the very capable hands of Harry Ertl. He took 5 victories in the 11 races and became a hero in the eyes of many. A brief Formula One career spanning 5 seasons and 5 different teams betrays the legend of the man, but he was a capable driver in open-wheeled cars, taking a podium finish at the Nordschleife in Formula 2 in 1975. By far the biggest disappointment of Ertl's life was his death at the tender age of 33 in 1982. He was killed in a Beechcraft Bonanza flown by his brother-in-law, Dr. Björg Becker Hohensi. He was survived by his wife Vera and son Sebastian. Welcome back to Salvador in Brazil for the 10th round of the Apex Rear Wing DRM Championship. We've just witnessed qualifying and Ziras taking his first pole position of the championship in his bid to defend his championship from the Caterhams in season number 7. Can he overhaul the odds and take victory in season 8? Goofball Antics, if he has anything to say about it, we'll be hoping not the case. He's qualified in 3rd and has to finish 4th if Ziras wins to become champion. Any worse than that, they'll be tied on points, and the championship would go to Ziras by virtue of his 3 wins on a count back.
It's been a very interesting championship battle so far this season because Ziras, of course, DNF'd in the first race at Renault. So it's really been a provisional battle between whoever's been in first and wherever Ziras was at any point in time during the standings, because he's been finishing very solidly since then, of course. Only had 3 races off the podium, barring that Renault finish, of course. He had a 4th, and a 6th in the early stages of the season. Every race since then has been either 1st or 2nd place. So he's been putting together a string of fabulous results in that BMW 320. And while Goofball Antics has been Mr. Consistency, as I like to call him, in his 320, having not finished off the podium all season, most of those results have been 3rd places. So the point standings between the two now is very, very close, and it's going to be a great battle. We see a few of the guys going around the track now, testing the limits of what they can do in terms of battles, because this is their first chance they really get to do that. Bar practice sessions, of course, where they're all trying to get to grips with the track. Now they're just trying to see how the cars feel in terms of racecraft and what they can do when they're side by side in certain parts of the circuit. We've seen a few bumpers and bonnets and everything flying off at all sorts of places, and cars crashing in ways you wouldn't dream of with this fantastic, narrow little circuit.
Absolutely. And just on that point about Goofball Antics on his podium streak, 9 podiums out of 9 races. And that is 4 more than anyone else. So 5 podiums for Ziras and 5 podiums for Sam Smith, the other 2 who were championship contenders, with Ziras the only one who's still a championship contender out of those 2, but Sam Smith up until last round was. So 5 podiums each for those 2. That just goes to show how if they had managed to keep it a little bit more consistent, they would be a lot closer to Goofball Antics right now. And Berto was actually another driver who scored quite well in his 6 rounds. He got 4 podium finishes and 2 victories, and it's only our loss that he wasn't able to finish and complete all of the rounds in this championship. Otherwise, we might have had a 4-car battle for the championship.
Yeah, there was some great racing from Berto in the early stages of this season. It was really a joy to watch. But unfortunately, he won't be contesting the rest of this championship due to other commitments that he has. So it is Sam Smith who is left to pick up the mantle for Blackshoop and Rennet and carry the team home, which unfortunately he will not be able to do in terms of the driver championship race. It is, as we have touched on quite a lot so far in this build-up session, the BMW 320s of Ziras and of Goofball Antics. We've got a few drivers missing from this race, of course. Berto, as we've mentioned plenty of times. Greg Tara will not be with us, and neither will Bang, from what I gather. So it will be a 13-car race, I believe. No, maybe it's a 12-car race. I'm not sure. We haven't had everyone post laps yet in that warm-up session. It is, but 13. We do have... It is 13 cars with the extra addition of Bagsy tonight. So 13 cars on the field. Great little field. Hopefully those 13 cars won't cause each other too much grief through that first chicane.
Sam Smith also has locked up 3rd place in the championship. Of course, he can't challenge the front 2, but he could potentially, be caught by those behind him. 101 points, the guys in 4th and 5th place, and so they are out of reach.
So they're all starting to grid up now on the main straight before the chicane. So there's a bit of a gap between the grid and the start-finish line for these drivers before they get their first lap underway. And they'll be hoping they don't end their race by the time they reach that first line at that chicane. It's going to be a very tight squeeze through there. And we're just waiting on a couple of cars now. I think we're waiting on Pablo, and he is the last one before we get started on our formation lap. He's still sitting in the pits at the moment, but we won't be too far away from a race start.
Well, they're up on their warm-up lap. Exciting times. We're about to crown a champion. Matty, take us through the grid.
So on pole position is Ziras, having posted a stellar time in his BMW 320 looking to charge ahead and take the lead in the championship for the first time this round. And that's all. There's only one round he need to be leading the championship for, and that is, of course, the final round. Let's see if he can do it. He's got some stiff competition, though. Nether is starting from second on the grid, by far his best qualifying result yet this season. Great result from him. Goofball Antics, the championship leader and the main contender to Ziras at the moment, is starting in third, so he's got to keep his nose out of trouble. It's not too much hassle ahead of him. Just got to get past Nether and then get into the battle with Ziras and see how that plays out towards the end of the race. Resist in the BMW M1 will be starting this race from fourth position on the grid ahead of Madbird in the first of the Ford Capris from Nikon Control Artec Racing. D-Samaj starts from sixth position, hoping to reclaim some of the form that he had in some of those speedier parts of the season gone before he missed last race, and a couple of others as well. Tyrrell starting from seventh position in the Jeff Fader Racing in Ford Capri ahead of Roadhog in eighth, Brody in ninth, Josh Bagsy in 10th, Sam Smith in 11th, Pablo in 12th, and Brenton Foley in 13th. Those last six cars, I believe, having all made track cut violations and not registered a lap time. Pablo is currently sitting at the end of the pit lane, so he will not start from his grid slot.
Yeah, so you mentioned he was taking a little bit of time to get out of the garage. He's missed the cut, so he will be able to compete in the race, but he'll be starting from the pit lane. I wonder if that was something that he elected to do. He didn't qualify to try and stay out of trouble. Wonder if he's electing to start from the pit lane to stay out of trouble.
That's definitely one way to get around it. You've got to be careful with that pit lane exit, of course. I'm not sure at what point the cars get released on that first lap at this circuit. So hopefully he doesn't get collected by anyone going very wide through that corner trying to get a position. But all the cars are making their way back onto the grid now, and we're getting set for a race start.
Exciting times. The tension mounts. The lights are on. Pablo's got himself disqualified because he's gone across the line too early. And we are go. It's a good start from the front row. And oh no, it's a crash already and Nether gets turned around. And there's a huge pile up at the first chicane. Unbelievable. This car's blocking the track now as the two Pink Pigs and D-Samaj try and make their way through. Finally, Brenton Foley's managed to get through, and we've got a safety car already. Now, crucially, our championship leaders are unaffected by this first and second place. That was a dream start for Goofball Antics, but horror for Nether and everyone who got caught up in that incident.
What an ugly, ugly mess, and it's a real shame for Nether with that fantastic qualifying result that he posted to have it all thrown away like that on the first lap.
All right, we're going back and we're going to try and catch a replay, see if we can find out exactly what happened there. He got tagged by Resist, I believe. We'll try and go on board, but I believe that's what happened. We can try and find Resist. And oh no, but I beg your pardon. I've absolutely thrown Resist under the bus there unnecessarily. It looks like Nether lost it on his own from the onboard of Resist. That was a very, very strange incident.
I think he did. I think that's exactly what happened. He just planted his foot a little bit too hard off the start line and completely lost it. So they're going to restart the race, I think.
Very interesting. That's unprecedented. Restarting the race. Let's have a look. I don't believe that was part of the rules. The rules permit a restart prior to the if there's an accident, if there's a technical issue prior to the first corner, but I don't recall anything about if there's a crash prior to the first corner. So that's very, very interesting. I wonder if a technical issue stopped Pablo from joining the race, and that's why.
That may very well be it, because Pablo is now sitting in his grid spot in 13th now and is looking to start the race. Although they look to be out of sequence at the back. I'm not sure why Pablo is currently sitting ahead of Brenton Foley, but I imagine they'll be taking a second formation lap before they get underway once again.
Well, the fact that he's actually taking the start now suggests that maybe that's why the restart occurred and it wasn't because of the crash, because as far as I'm aware, if you crash, then that's just bad luck, unfortunately. But if a technical issue stops you from taking the start, then that is grounds for a restart under Apex Rear Wing rules. So it's my assumption that that's what has happened. Nonetheless, we're going round for a second warm-up, and that is very, very nervous times now for everyone. We sort of got the start out of the way, the adrenaline was pumping, and now we have to reset and build it all up again. Well,
Nether is going to be counting his lucky stars that he gets a second chance at the race start. He'll obviously be making sure he doesn't drop the clutch too hard this time around so he doesn't rotate the car into the first chicane. And now he's got a chance to really make the most of that qualifying session. He'll be very thankful for that.
That he will. So, nervous times. The grid, of course, unchanged with the one exception of Pablo actually able to take the start now. And he'll be starting from 13th place. And he's let a bit of a gap emerge in front of him. He'll want to close that up before the end of the lap, and it looks like he will be doing so. Because all the time that they sit waiting on the grid, their tyre and brake temperature ebbs away slowly. I'm nervous. Are you nervous, Matty?
I am a little bit, to be honest with you. I really don't know what's going to happen in this race. I can't really give you a solid prediction. Do you have anyone in mind?
Well, it's very easy to pick Ziras from this position because he is a man with a cool head for these sorts of situations. Goofball Antics, can he hang on to 3rd or 4th place? He will have been happy with how that start went. He would probably be a little bit disappointed that they're resetting. It's great news for Nether, of course. We want to see him do well and may well be in with his best shot of a podium all season long. The car's now grid up.
It's a tough track for overtaking, so the qualifying results may prove to be crucial in where these guys finish. They've gridded up once again, and they'll be making a start very soon. I think they're just about in place now. Ziras is sitting on pole position, eagerly awaiting the lights to go red before the race start. I think Madbird is slightly out of position on the grid. He's just getting settled into his box now. No, he's quite a bit off, so we've got a little bit of time to kill before we get started. He's in his box now, and we'll be getting underway very shortly. The horns are ablaze. They're ready to go. They really want to get out on the track and really want to start cutting some laps.
Someone else must be not lined up properly. There's horns beeping. We should have been going by now. Someone else must not be lined up properly.
Not sure what's happening here. Maybe another technical issue. Hopefully that's not the case. But we are still waiting.
We haven't scripted this, people. This is very nervous times. Goofball Antics and Ziras thinking, get on with it. Someone is clearly not in their right spot. We'll see if we can try and get a better angle to try and decipher who it is. But everyone looks pretty good. Maybe Nether looks like he's at a bit of an angle, but I can't imagine that's too much to be considered out of your box.
Sam Smith looks to be a little bit further back from his line than the rest of the drivers, though. I'm not sure if that's going to cause any issues.
So cars... Oh, someone's exited out. Was that Sam?
Sam Smith. Yes.
Oh.
Sam Smith is in the pits. I'm not sure what's happened there at all. This maybe is cause for another restart. So there's been another technical issue. Of course, you have to keep in mind, I'm not sure if we mentioned it earlier, but we aren't running the server on Ziras's hardware as we usually do. Tonight is being run on Sam Smith's hardware due to some issues with Ziras's server setup. So there may be some technical issues being ironed out that are unprecedented. Hopefully we can get a race on our hands very soon, but we'll just have to figure out what's going on in the meantime.
Well, it appears that they've reset the server, so they'll be going through their server. So we're going through practice qualifying and warm-up, and then a manual reset of the grid will be required, where Sam, who is the server host, because Ziras normally hosts it, but had technical issues earlier in the night, and Sam Smith stepped up to the plate with his server, and that would be why he was the one to exit out of that grid first, and there'll be a brief hiatus while that is rectified.
Just going to see if I can get one of the drivers to shed some light in the Discord chat to see what's happening as we eagerly await these technical issues to be ironed out so we can get underway. But, geez, at that point on the grid, I tell you what, the atmosphere was so tense. As Murray Walker would say, you could cut it with a cricket stump. You could cut it with something even blunter, probably. But, gracious me, after we've had 2 grids already, we're going to have a 3rd grid, and I can't even imagine the crescendo of adrenaline that will be unleashed on that start. We certainly hope that no one comes unstuck right at the beginning of the race. We want that to... Basically, we'd love it to go right down to the last lap, the last corner, if possible. It would be fantastic. But let's see what happens as we appear to have cycled through into a new race session, and gridding up will recommence. Just received word from Rody on what's happening, although he has told me that he's simply passed on information to Stairs' private inbox. So I'm not actually sure what's happened there. I'll have to leave that with Stairs to see if we can fill in some information for the viewers and keep them posted on what's been happening. But we are gridding up again, so things are looking pretty good right now.
Yeah, just the word coming through from Rhodey was second restart was due to just Automobilista things. So they're doing a full restart. And the first one was due to Pabs and turn 1 melee. Now, from my point of view, the turn 1 melee is completely irrelevant in that situation. There's no precedent for a restart prior to the first corner for a non-technical issue, that i.e. a crash. But the Pabs thing, if deemed to be because of a technical issue, unable to take the start, would explain why there is a restart. Anyway, that is the way it is. I can tell you he'll be feeling very, very aggrieved if he's taken out on the third restart, and that would be Goofball Antics.
Well, at this point, you'd want to believe that all these guys will be in the purest mindset for the race start, making sure there's nothing going on, nothing that's going to cause them to make any errors on that start, because they've had plenty of time to mull it over and think about what they're going to do once the lights extinguish themselves. So hopefully there won't be any major incidents on the start of this third attempt at getting a race underway here at Salvador.
Thankfully, it means we will have a full grid, or having said that, oh no, Pablo is in the shot. He hadn't quite appeared when I was looking for him, but Pablo will make the grid, so we still have a full grid of 13 cars, and we hope we end the first lap still with a full grid of 13 cars.
I think there was a technical issue on that last attempt at a restart. I did touch on earlier that for whatever reason, Automobilista had placed Pablo and Brenton Foley in each other's grid spots on the grid, even though they were numbered 13 for Pablo and 12 for Brenton Foley. Foley was sitting at the back of the grid. So it was definitely an issue on Automobilista's part last time around, and it looks to be clarified now as the numbers are in the correct spot. They were on the right grid spots before they took off for their warm-up laps, so these tyres will be very toasty indeed.
So final reminder of the championship prospects for these two drivers, Ziras and Goofball Antics. Goofball Antics leads Ziras in the championship by 14 points. If Ziras can win the race and Goofball Antics can do no better than 5th, Ziras will win the championship. If Goofball Antics finishes 4th and Ziras wins the race, Goofball Antics is the champion.
A lot of interesting scenarios to play out. Very unpredictable what this final race is going to be. And we do have cars lining up on the start-finish line for the third time, and hopefully the final time. We're all gridded up.
Revs
the
rise.
lights are on.
Lights are on. We're going to decide a champion. Now, huge weight on the line. Everyone very nervous. Goofball Antics bogged down. Goes side by side through the corner with Resist, but Resist backs out of it. And Goofball Antics hangs on to third place. A good start there from the front two as Ziras streaks out into a lead ahead of Nether. And looks like everyone's got through reasonably cleanly. Goofball Antics will be sighing, if I can get my words out, he will be sighing a sigh of relief, heaving a sigh of relief if I can finally say it. And Resist is putting Goofball Antics under a little bit of pressure in these early stages. Goofball Antics will be happy to have his head down. Meanwhile, everything the back of the grid is pretty standard. Brenton Foley making 3 positions up on the start, and Sam Smith making his way past Brenton Foley.
Yeah, everyone managed to get it through that first chicane. Very neat and tidy, so we've got no casualties thus far. We do have a very interesting 4-car battle from Tyrrell all the way down to Roadhog, with Sam Smith and Brenton Foley stuck in the middle of that sandwich, trying to get as far away from it as they possibly can. As we just said earlier, Brenton Foley is currently 3 spots up, and Sam Smith is 3 spots up as well. He's up to 7th position already, and Brenton Foley is looking to get past Tyrrell in much the same manner as they break into the chicane for the second time around to complete the second lap, and Tyrrell's gone straight across both those chicanes in an attempt to stay out of what he perceives as traffic already. They're going to have to be careful throughout the rest of the race to make sure they don't get too many track cuts, but at the end of the first lap, it is Ziras who still leads by a gap of 1.4 seconds now, with Nether still in 2nd position and Goofball still in 3rd. Resist and Madbird not too far behind.
Nether's just had a bit of contact with the wall, and that'll be something that Goofball Antics will see, but he's going to be looking in his rear vision mirror as well there, because Resist...
Oh, Nether spun!
Nether has spun. Nether has spun out of 2nd place, and thankfully finds a gap in which to get out of the way. and rejoins behind Sam Smith and Diesamage. So that means Sam Smith is now up 4 spots from his starting position, now hounding Diesamage over 5th place. What a racy start for Sam Smith. And Goofball Antics will be very, very happy indeed in the nicest possible way to Nether, because he is now up into 2nd place, but he will be coming under pressure for 3rd place. Could have got a track cut through the chicane there. He want to watch those. They only get a number of warnings before a penalty is handed out, and that would be a disastrous way to lose a championship.
So Nether's lost quite a few spots after that incident, but thankfully he doesn't have too much damage, and he's not brought out a safety car either. So the race is still pressing on as usual, and the result of that, as you said, is Goofball Antics is now up into 2nd, looking to claw back the gap that's already expanded out. It's already a 5-second gap between Ziras and Goofball at the front of the grid here. So Goofball will try to make up as much of that space as he can, but Resist is all over the back of him, all over him like a cheap suit, not letting this car go anytime soon. This is going to be a great battle to get this race underway.
Yeah, and a very, very tricky pass to make for Resist, because that BMW 320 can brake so much later than the BMW M1. Two cars not even remotely close to each other in characteristics, in style, and the way they drive, but made by the same manufacturer. And it provides a very, very interesting give and take.
And that's the beauty of this championship, really. You've got all these very different cars who are able to compete on relatively even terms, depending on what circuit you're at, of course. And this circuit is proving to be one of the great equalizers, but favouring the BMW 320s just that little bit more.
Now, Madbird's got a nice watching brief on the battle for the podium. He'll be eager to try and get his 2nd podium finish of the championship, and currently ahead of his closest rival in the championship, Brenton Foley, who's down there in 8th place. And meanwhile, the battle for 5th and 6th place is now Sam Smith ahead of Diesamage, with Nether recovering, putting Diesamage under a bit of pressure, and Foley closing up on the back of that trio.
So the battle between Sam Smith and Brenton Foley is definitely going the way of Sam Smith at the moment. He's been able to make up a lot more time around these initial laps than Brenton Foley has, of course, with that Porsche 935 having a little bit more power on tap to deal with it, as he has a big slide through that big right-hand sweeper, goes over the pedestrian crossing, which is about the approximate spot for the braking zone into that hairpin there, as we see Sam Smith going through now. I've got my words all mixed up at the moment. It's all happening here. We don't know what's going on. Very confusing, but Sam Smith, we know, is very quick, and he's already getting close to the back of Madburn. The gap's just under 3 seconds between those two, and it'll be getting very short within the next few moments.
Yeah, a little bit early to look at lap times, but because everyone's still setting their personal best, getting those tyres up to temperature. But on the previous occasion, it was a 107.7 for Madbird, and Sam Smith took 0.8 of a second out of him on a 106.9.
So you know that Porsche 935 is quick. And we know that Sam Smith is a very handy driver. Goofball's in the wall! Goofball is in the wall!
Oh no, Goofball in the wall. Unbelievable. And he's out!
He's out of the race! Unbelievable! This is incredible. He's lost a wheel, or he's got terminal damage as a result of hitting that fence. And now all Ziras has to do is finish this race any higher than... I'm just trying to figure out my points now. I think he has to finish this race higher than 3rd, and he will have the championship locked away.
Absolutely devastating for Goofball Antics. He's been the most consistent driver all season long. Hasn't finished off the podium to this point, and he retires. Just took too much speed into the corner, and the thing went straight on into the wall at unabated speed, and he lost a wheel, which is an instant retirement. And Goofball Antics, at the worst possible moment, has put it in the wall. Now Ziras, frantically, I do my calculations, but as I understand it, if he finishes well, basically in the points, he wins the championship. I'll come back to you on that one. If he finishes first, Goof needed to finish 5th. If he finished 2nd, Goof needed to finish 10th. And if he finishes 3rd, Goof needed to finish 14th. So Ziras, all he has to do is finish in the top 3. And he's just had a bit as he spun. No, he hasn't.
No, he's still going. Oh, it's a very deceptive camera angle there. We weren't sure what was happening because he departed out of the view of the shot while he was fully sideways, so we weren't sure if he was going to keep it together. But Ziras is still on track at the moment. He's already coming up on the back of Rody, who will be his first lap traffic around this circuit. Rody currently circulating in 12th, as it is now a 12-car race. And yes, as long as Ziras finishes on the podium, he will be the champion. I'm sure Goofball Antics won't be leaving the server anytime soon. He'll still be spectating. He'll still be keeping very close tabs, very nervous eyes on what Ziras is able to do in this race. It's going to be, it's captivating. I'm already, oh man.
So nervous times for Ziras, but he's been here so many times before. He certainly won't be. Well, I was going to say he won't be too nervous. He'll probably be a little bit nervous lapping Bagsy there for the first time. Bagsy, who hasn't got a lot of experience in these cars, and we can see what no experience in these cars can do. Sometimes it puts people into the wall, but it can put the most experienced drivers into the wall. And Goofball Antics, well, if it can happen to him, it can happen to anyone.
Just on the 8th lap now of the race. 47 minutes to go, so we're about... oh, that's a big crash for Bagsy behind Ziras, and that's going to clog the track. Hopefully no one's going to run into him there, but he's lost his front bumper. He'll be able to press on, but that's if he can turn this car around, and that's going to cause a local yellow flag. And if he stays on the track for too long, that will be a safety car.
Well, we're just catching a replay now of the incident that's just beset Bagsy. Wow, huge snap of oversteer. And Resist was very, very lucky to not get caught up in that one. So a big, big moment for Bagsy. And there is a safety car. There is a safety car. Yellow flags are out. And that will compress the grid. We haven't had too many racing laps, so there aren't too many people a lap down. And that will bring absolutely everyone back into the fray. And that is not what Ziras wanted.
Ziras will now be making this a very defensive race off the safety car restart, because Resist is able to put on mountains and mountains of pressure. And by the time they come around, Sam Smith will be back in the fray as well. He's currently sitting in 4th position, having made up 6 spots from where he started this race. So he'll be getting very close to that lead battle pretty soon. So Ziras has a lot to consider. He's got a lot to play for, and there's a little bit of damage to Pablo there as well. He looks like he's had an incident of his own somewhere else around
a little bit. He's missing his front bonnet. That will not be particularly aerodynamic. Not that that is simulated, but that is what we feared might happen on a track like this. Walls are close, and safety cars were going to be likely. This puts Madbird in a good position. We believe that Ford Caprice may well be able to no-stop like they did in Belle Isle if there was a safety car early in the race, and it has occurred.
Pablo, of course, will need to make a pit stop to fix the damage on that car as he gets out of the way of those lead cars on the lead lap via the chicane. And now the Chevy Camaro safety car is bringing the field very close, and it'll be very close once the rest of the field catches up. They've already fanned out quite a bit, actually, in his first few laps. So it's going to be quite a while before we have a sizable queue behind the safety car.
So Pablo, Rody, and Bagsy, the only 3 men a lap down, with Goofball Antics retiring from the race. The first DNF for Goofball Antics throughout this entire season. And that means he becomes one of only... Well, he was in an exclusive club of people who hadn't retired yet. That including Berto. In fact, guys who'd finished every race up to this point. Berto, having not started 3 of them, wasn't in that club. The other one was Roadhog, who's finished in the points in every single race this season. And it was just those 2 up until the point where Goofball Antics unfortunately went out of this race. Now, we've got cars in the pits. Madbird's come into the pits, so no stop for him, which is a bit of a surprise to me. And also
Foley as well, and I think Rody.
And also,
no, Rody's bypassed it.
We've also got Bagsy coming in to make a pit stop as well.
Bagsy, of course, had that damage that caused the safety car that he'll need to repair before he can do too much quick turning of a wheel around this circuit. And Pablo in a similar situation as well. But we do have, as you said, Madbird, Rody, and Brenton Foley all in Ford Capris, which is interesting to note, making pit stops of their own volition. So maybe they think they can go to the end of the race without having to make a stop. I think that's the case, and it'll be very interesting to see how that plays out for them. They'll be on slightly fresher tyres than the rest of the field, so that can make their battles very interesting.
Interesting to see Resist not make a pit stop, because I don't think that BMW M1 can no-stop even with this safety car intervention. But maybe it's too early in the race for him to actually make a pit stop and make it to the end of the race. So too the Porsches. with Sam Smith having an absolutely stellar start to this race and up to third place actually now. And Rhodey gets himself a drive-through penalty. As we mentioned, it is a very, very slow pit lane speed limit, only 40 kilometers an hour.
You're mentioning awards to me earlier that will be given out to some of the drivers at the conclusion of this race and the conclusion of this championship. Do we have an award that you know of for pit lane speed penalties? Oh, I've just realised the safety car's in. We're underway already. That was a very quick safety car period. I don't think all the cars were able to make it back around to the queue, but we are underway once again. Ziras is going up the inside of Bagsy, who's in a very unfortunate spot right now as lap traffic. So Sam Smith's getting past now, and Sam Smith is in the podium spots right now as a consequence of those pit stops. And I'd say a few of these guys at the front, namely Resist and Sam Smith, will be waiting until later in the race to make their stops. Because if you look at the nature of this track, that's surely not going to be the only safety car period we have. There are most likely going to be other incidents, and they may think to themselves that there'll be better opportunities to take that stop where they can't lose very much time.
Yeah, it's all working out very well for Ziras right now, because the guys immediately behind him in the podium spots will have to make a pit stop again. And that includes all the Porsches actually down from 4th, 5th, Nether, Decimage. I don't think Roadhog in that Toyota Celica will be able to make a no-stop. As Ziras sets the fastest lap of the race, so absolutely on the pace straight away. And Tyrrell up in 7th. He's running very nicely indeed.
He's doing very well. Of course, he is benefiting from a few of the unfortunate incidents that have befallen some of the field. But 7th is still a very good result for Tyrrell. I think if he presses on the way he is, it will be his best finish so far this season. Of course, he hasn't been able to finish any higher than 9th, which he did at Watkins Glen and Holyham, the new track that everyone had, that none of the drivers had driven around before. So it'll be a great chance to get a few more points and a little bit better of a result at the tail end of this season for Tyrrell.
Well, I think we're still in a little bit of shock from what happened with Goofball Antics putting it into the wall on, well, the opening stanza of the race. Really, we weren't expecting it to end that way, but it might not be over yet. Of course, Resist still has to finish this race with 15 points, or 14 points. 14 points isn't actually something you can get, because you get 15 points for third place. 16 points for third place and only 13 points for fourth place. So first, second, or third are the only 3 options for Ziras, but he's doing it comfortably at the moment, like he has done so many times before. And
Ziras is just bested his fastest lap by 0.6 of a second, Des.
So he's not dealing. He doesn't really need to push right now, but he knows no other way. I think if he backs off, it's that sort of Ayrton Senna syndrome, where if you're not quite concentrating at 100%, you put it in the wall, so you've got to push. That's what he does.
But don't forget what happened to Ayrton Senna at Monaco in 1988.
That was when he backed off.
The entire race doing that, he pulled up a margin of 40 seconds or so, and then all of a sudden he was in the fence at Portier. So hopefully that doesn't happen to Ziras, but bloody hell, there you go. Anything can happen. Keep that in mind, folks.
Well, he's got his brother behind him, so you know his brother, after being poleaxed last week, won't want to repeat the thing, least of all to his brother, for the championship. So he's got a 2-second buffer, and then behind Sam Smith is pushing very, very hard indeed. So he may well be up on the back of Resist very shortly indeed, and that will be very, very interesting to see how he backs up after last week with their issue. They've had some good battles. Holoham, most notably for me, was a great battle, multi-lap battle between these two that went very, very well for Resist in the end.
Goofball Antics just popped up in the group chat saying he'll be keeping his helmet on for the remainder of the evening, so he will be sticking around and he will be keeping tabs on what's happening. And why wouldn't you, if you're in that position, of course, that position being numero uno in the championship with just this race to go, you really want to be making sure that no one else can reach that standing in the points where you are. But Ziras is looking pretty good in terms of race pace. Of course, he's streaking away at the front. He's already got a gap of about 3.5 seconds. That's come down a little bit, so I'd say he's backed off just a smidge. I don't think Resist would have been catching him too much, because Resist, of course, is trying his best to defend against Sam Smith, who's all over him like a cheap suit.
Yeah, that gap's coming down quite quickly indeed. Sam Smith on the previous lap, well, he was actually slower than Resist on the previous lap, to destroy my point, but as I said that, the most recent lap times flashed up on my screen in which Resist did a 107.2 and Sam Smith did a 106.2, taking a full second out of him on that previous lap. It ebbs and flows a little bit, but it looks like Sam has the pace to catch up with Resist right now, who struggles a bit with the rear tyres on that BMW M1 when they get a little bit old, and I can see that just starting to happen now.
An issue that might rear its ugly head towards the end of this race is track cuts. Of course, we talked about it at length throughout the season. Not so much at this track, because the only spot you can really do it is that final chicane, but that final chicane is a doozy. If you get your line just a little bit wrong, if you're trying to pass someone and it doesn't work out, you're getting a track cut, and I believe if you get 4 track cuts during a race, you will receive a drive-through penalty. And with such a long, slow pit lane, putting so much more length on a lap that you don't need, that's not something that this lead driver is going to be getting. I think Sam Smith would have received a track cut just then through that chicane, and he'll be keeping tabs on how many of those he's racking up and making sure he doesn't get too many more for the remainder of this race.
Resist upped the pace on that previous lap. He's down into the 105s, matching the sort of times that his brother's doing in the lead. Sam Smith was down into a 106, so that's just ebbing and flowing a little bit, and in that occasion it ebbed in the way of Resist. Let's have a look at what's going on down the field.
Oh, Resist is upside down! Resist is in the fence of the chicane! Oh, Resist!
So Ziras is in the fence!
Ziras! Resist is ahead!
Unbelievable. So now Ziras is down to second. Unbelievable. I'm trying to see what happened there. Let's catch a replay. And how hard did he hit the fence? A little bit of curb. That's all it took. The car nearly rolled over. It wasn't going too quickly, and Resist locked up, and Ziras very thankful that he didn't get hit in the rear by his brother. It's still okay if you're a Ziras fan, because he's still in championship winning position, but he's made it a little bit more difficult for himself.
And now, right on his tail, he's got one Mr. S. Smith in the Porsche 935, looking to get past if he can. He's already pulled a gap, has Ziras. The gap between the two is now 1.6 seconds, and I imagine Ziras won't be too far off, passing his brother once again for the lead, but that's going to have shaken him up just for sure, and he may even have some damage from that impact to the wall.
He may, but it's still very much in Ziras' court, because of the top 4, in fact, the top 5 cars, Ziras is the only one who we don't think needs to come into the pits, because none of the Porsches were able to. Resist wasn't in that BMW M1, who currently leads the race. So there will be lengthy pit stops for all of those top 5, which really puts Madbird in the box seat for second place right now.
Yeah, it really does, and that would certainly be an unlikely podium. Madbird channeling his inner Goofball Antics, who's with us in spirit for the rest of this race, having retired earlier with that impact at the same chicane where Ziras just had an incident. But Madbird could, as you said, stand to do very well in this race, as could Brenton Foley, who's not a huge amount of time behind him, 16 seconds. That is a bit of a margin, but that could definitely shrink, because those two have very different driving styles, and as long as Brenton Foley doesn't make too many mistakes, he could be in the mix for a good result today as well.
Oh, a bit deep there from Ziras into, that was the hairpin, so it's, well, from a strategic point of view, it still is very much Ziras' game, but he has put himself in the traffic, so he's behind Resist and he's ahead of Sam, and we all know what happened last week. Not to say that Sam would do it again. He'd be very much put on notice. Any more indiscretions, he will likely face a positional penalty in the next 10 races. He did get a warning for that incident with Resist. Probably would have been a more severe penalty if he hadn't immediately retired from the race, but now Ziras is putting Resist under a bit of pressure, and a bit of a moment there from Resist out of the chicane. That allows Ziras around the outside, but there's really no way through on turn 1. Ziras doesn't want to take any undue risk, and Resist, you can be certain, won't want to take any undue risk as well. So this is just backing each other up.
Yeah, Resist doesn't really want to, but he's having to. He's having to drive an incredibly defensive race and make moves that he normally wouldn't make to keep Ziras behind him. And as you can see, he almost lost it in the final chicane, and he did run very wide in the hairpin leading up to it, which is where he lost so much time. The gap's expanded out now to what was 7/10, but it's right back up again, as Ziras in that BMW 320 is just so much better on the brakes. He's able to catch right up to the back of any car he's battling with, and they'll be coming up towards that hairpin now once they go through this fast right-hand sweeper.
What's happened to Sam? Sam's pace has just gone nowhere. He should be right on the back of this. These guys are fighting tooth and nail. As Ziras, once again, he's going for that late apex, actually. It looks like he's going deep, but he's just getting a late apex to try and slingshot him down this straight. But Sam's 3 seconds adrift. He's nowhere. As Ziras surely gets a corner cut for that. Nearly did he basically did a stoppie in his 320 there. Nose planting the ground and lost a lot of traction because the rear wheels don't do much accelerating when they're up in the air like that.
I think they both got a track cut there actually, but Ziras was a little bit more dramatic, and as a result, he went down to a second behind Resist, but he's pulled that right back up through some of these heavy braking zones. And some of those braking zones are going to prove to be very hot overtaking spots as this race goes on. As we see Tyrrell coming to the pits now with not too much bodywork left on the front of that car. So I'd say he's had a friendly meeting or an unfriendly meeting with a concrete wall somewhere around here.
That might have happened a few laps ago. There was some green pieces of bodywork littering the track a few laps ago, and that was from Tyrrell's car.
Oh, Resist is rotated onto the infield almost through that final hairpin, and Ziras is now on the outside as they battle towards the chicane. He's not going to have the line for it. Yes, he is. What a move. Oh, that's a track cut, though. I'll tell you what.
But he was ahead. So he's spent one of his track cuts and managed to get the lead. Now that'll be very, very interesting because does he relinquish the position? Because he was ahead prior to the corner, but did he only get ahead and make the corner because he got the track cut on the previous? I think if you're Ziras, probably not too worried about that. Or if you Resist, you're probably not too worried about that because really they are in different strategic battles. But I don't know, Goofball Antics might want to have a word to say or two about it.
Yeah, well, he's certainly our #1 spectator at the moment. So, Ziras just getting a couple more wheels up in the air at that chicane where he hit the fence earlier. He's really flirting with danger now, Ziras. He's trying to get as far away from Resist as possible. And he can do that with his vehicle, but at what cost? He's running out of track cuts very rapidly, as we see a little bit of smoke on that final hairpin there. So he can't be doing too much more of that, although the battle has thinned out a little bit between him and his brother. So it's the second point, 2 or 3 tenths, and he's got no one near him as they go through this final chicane. So he's not going to cut the track this time out of desperation. As we see...
Rody in the pits.
It is Rody in the pits, pitting for some more damage, I believe. So
now, there is Bagsy now to lap 4, the leaders. You mentioned earlier the chance of these track cuts coming up to bite these guys later on in the race, and that could prove to be a pivotal part of this race. If there are more safety cars and then the field is bunched up, then those penalties become even more damaging. So it could be a scenario where if there are track cuts and penalties to serve as a result of those track cuts, and then the field is compressed with still 8 cars on the lead lap, that could be an issue later on, and things like that could quite easily flip this race against Ziras. Right now it looks like smooth sailing, but everything has to go right for him.
Yeah, there's a lot of unpredictable factors that we can't really pencil in at the moment because we don't really know what's going to happen. Are some of these drivers going to hit their quota of track cuts? Are they going to keep it clean? Is someone going to hit the fence and bring in a safety car? How's pit strategy going to go? It's really fully up in the air at the moment, and we're just about at half race distance as Tyrrell rotates his car once again. He's pointing backwards on the exit of what I believe is turn 3, and he's not able to turn that car around very quickly. So keep your eyes on Tyrrell because he may be bringing out the next safety car.
Well, he's waiting, I think, for traffic to go by. He's done that right in front of Ziras there. Stay where you are, stay where you are, don't go forwards. He's got to let the field go through, try and find a gap that's quick enough or big enough for him to flick spin it round. Oh, that's very badly done indeed. Very, very... and he's out of the race. So he's realised that he's being in the way a little bit, and he's probably not too comfortable with continuing. As D-Smash makes his pit stop. Very nearly took out Nether, who's thankfully not under any pressure. And it was a lap car that was behind Nether that nearly made its way past. He's got a 20-second advantage over Madbird, though.
D-Smash is now in the pit lane, taking his pit stop for the race. The first of the Porsche 935s, I believe, to do so.
Which means we may well see some more Porsches in very shortly indeed. So we turn our attention to Sam Smith, Nether, and that's all. Because Oh, sorry, Bagsy is also in the pit. But Bagsy is also in the Porsche, but made his pit stop during the safety car period.
He certainly did. He's currently circulating down in 10th position. He's got only one running car behind him at the moment, and that is Rody, who has had to take at least one drive-through penalty so far this race. He may extend that margin as the race goes on. So Bagsy's not doing fantastic in his return, but of course that is due to the fact that he's not very familiar with this car or this track. So we can't expect a huge amount from him, and hopefully we'll see a little bit more racing action from him when ARW Season 9 kicks off.
Yeah, well, personal circumstances look like they may have turned in his favour, and work commitments may not be so much of an issue for him in the future. We certainly hope that he can continue to race with us. But the closest race on track right now is between Resist and Sam Smith. It's just stretched out while I've been talking about it, of course, because Sam Smith got a little bit out of sorts on that first chicane. But Resist was a little bit messy through there as well, as these tyres start to get a little bit older. They're 30 minutes into this race now, and having not pitted, those tyres will be starting to scream a little bit. But Sam Smith seems to have the pace at this stage of the race.
Brenton Foley looks like his tyres have bitten him back on the backside, because he's lost his bonnet somewhere. He's clipped a wall, I would say, and he's started shedding some bodywork, and I'd say his tyres are definitely on the way out, given the way he normally steers the car around the track.
Here we go, Sam really closing up in the mid-sector of this lap, and Resist will be starting to look in his mirrors a little bit. Doesn't need to defend into turn 5 on this occasion, but we saw that he got a little bit loose on the exit of this corner when he was battling Ziras a few laps ago. No such problems for him this time, and he comes into the pits. So Resist is the first to blink in this battle. Sam Smith stays on the racetrack.
Not sure how much fuel that BMW M1 is going to need to drink before it can get back out on the track and start putting laps down again to be able to make it to the end of this race. We'll have to wait and see once the field in front pits, notably Sam Smith, to see what the comparison is between the M1 and the Porsche 935 around this track. So at the moment, we don't have a huge amount of battles on track at the moment because of the pit stops, which have shaken things up a little bit. And now Sam Smith has a margin of just under 9 seconds to 0. So he's got a lot of hard charging to do to make his way up there. But he is currently sitting in second, 8 spots up from where he started.
Yeah, it's going to look very good for Ziras once Sam makes his pit stop. Assuming, of course, that BMW 320 can indeed no stop like it did in Belle Isle. But all looking very good for him right now. Right now is when Goofball Antics will be absolutely kicking himself, because he didn't really need to push too hard. If he was able to just keep circulating around and not take too many risks, the strategy would have worked in his favour. But Resist is back on track now, 7th place behind Brenton Foley. So he's got a bit of work to do, because Brenton Foley was one of those cars who made his pit stop during the safety car period, and so too Madbird. And did Roadhog pit as well? I think he might have.
I'm not sure if Roadhog pitted. I wouldn't be surprised if he did, because that Toyota Celica is around about on par with some of those Ford Capris in terms of fuel, but we haven't really seen a Ford Capri pit under normal racing conditions. All the ones who are running and free of damage came in, I believe, during that safety car period. So we've got another Porsche coming to the pits now, I believe. I think it is Bagsy who is coming in, so Sam Smith is still yet to pit.
Yeah, he's still holding a steady gap of 8 seconds to the leader. This is interesting though. Resist, having made his pit stop, has only just not gone a lap down. Ziras is in the back of the shot there when you look at Resist, and he's going to be fighting mighty hard to stay on the lead lap, because that will be very important indeed. If there is a late race safety car, it'll allow him to get back a lot of track position. If he goes a lap down, there is no lucky dog in this series, and that will mean he stays a lap down.
So even though they're not participating in the same race, Resist will want to hope that Ziras will stay behind him, but of course Resist will get the blue flags when Ziras comes around, and if he ignores a few of those blue flags, I think it results in a drive-through penalty.
Yeah.
Not sure what the rules are specifically for Apex rear wing, but Ziras will surely get past here now.
Yeah, doesn't want to pass too many corners with the blue flags being shown to him, and I believe he'll probably just let out of the no, he goes deep into the corner and allows Ziras through up the inside. So that's bad news for Resist, because all of that is time in his battle with Sam Smith, of course, who is yet to make his pit stop. Coming around turn 5 now, and we'll see if he makes his bid for the pit entry on this particular occasion. No, he doesn't.
Quite a bit of longevity in that Porsche 935. A lot more than we were expecting, I think, around this track. He may be running those tyres down to the wires, mind you, and driving that thing on fumes to make sure he can get as far as he can through this race before he needs to pit. Because if you're pitting under race conditions, he really can't do much in terms of safety car timing. But if you do get that timing right, if you manage to pit just before a safety car comes out, you're in the best seat in the house. Not sure if... Oh, we've got Madbird, who's had a bit of an incident in the hairpin there, and he's right up on the inside of the gutter there. He's lost quite a bit of time to Nether. The gap between those two is now 30 seconds, and he's got a track cut as well. No drive-through penalties as of yet for track cuts, but I don't think it'll be too long before we start seeing a couple.
Yeah, Madbird, no damage from that incident by the looks of it, just a bit of time loss. His, oh no, his tyres shouldn't be that old, because he did make his pit stop during that safety car period as well, but he just looped it and was kind of a little half spin, awkwardly got up on the curb, and will probably be hoping he doesn't do that again. Gap, importantly for him, to Brenton Foley is 5 seconds, so that is a very, very close battle indeed in terms of the championship points, because as we said earlier in the broadcast, those two tied going into this race on points, and whoever comes out ahead in this race...
Oh, Foley's had a big incident, actually.
Oh,
he's gone right up on his side, and he's lost a lot of time, so I don't think that battle's going to be starting this lap.
Well, let's catch the replay. He's already missing his bonnet from an earlier incident, and coming around this left-hand sweeper into the chicane that he had a bit of an issue. Yeah, he did exactly the same thing Ziras did about 20 minutes ago, and just taking too much curb on the inside and hitting the wall. So that gap is back out to about 10 seconds now.
Meanwhile, Roadhog had a spin of his own at the final corner.
It's all happening, isn't it?
Yeah, that was around about when Ziras was passing through as well, so that could have been disastrous, but thankfully they're all still running on track. And the benefit of that goes to Resist, who's made up one spot, as he and Roadhog are both on the same lap at the moment.
Yeah, so Roadhog's lost 2 positions from that spin. He was ahead of Brenton Foley as well before that. So Sam Smith, waiting to see if he comes into the pit lane, 8 positions up from where he started, currently running second.
He's doing a very good job keeping this stint alive as long as he possibly can. I have said it before, but you really don't expect these Porsche 935s to be able to go too far. We're a little bit past half race distance now, so he may just be wanting to get himself on some fresher tyres so he can put up a bit more of a challenge at the end if there is a late safety car who always up on two wheels there, glances at the wall on the way out of the chicane, but he's still motoring along.
He wouldn't have been the only one. As we said, we saw Foley do that on the broadcast a lap ago, and Ziras before him. Probably many others who we didn't see on the broadcast. Sam Smith comes into the hairpin at turn 5. It's been, I think, a good redemption race from him so far after dramatically crashing out of the championship last week. We thought that he would coming in. Oh, as I've said that, he's spun it, and he's lost his rear wing. Oh, I was starting to wax lyrical about how good he was doing, but showing that it can happen to anyone, Sam Smith has caused a safety car. Yellow flags are out. Safety car, ladies and gentlemen.
Unbelievable. So he's got no rear wing on that Porsche 935, so he would have struggled to get around to the pits to get that thing repaired for damage, but now there's a safety car out, so this is going to make things very juicy, and Nether is back in contention for that second spot. He will be once Sam Smith goes back to the pit lane.
Well,
it will be Nether who inherits second, and Madbird will come into third once they go around and meet up with a safety car.
I don't think Madbird will be too pleased about that personally, because he's now got Brenton Foley right behind him, or he will once the field condenses, and Foley's got no one to attack him because Resist is a lap down. Oh, Foley, did he get his lap back? He came out, oh, he did. He nearly went a lap down. If he was forced to stay behind the safety car, then the leader would have been right behind him and he would have got blue flags on the restart. So that was very fortunate indeed for Brenton Foley.
Certainly was, and it really shows us some very strange things that's happening. Speaking of strange things happening, Sam Smith still out on track, hasn't pitted.
Yeah, well, you can't pit while the safety car's out. They've got to wait until they form up behind the safety car, and then the pits will open. And that's very unfortunate for Sam, because he's going to lose an absolute bucket load of time and drop way down, probably a lap down, because of the damage that needs to be fixed. And that's absolutely destroyed his race. What was looking promising, I was just about to say how it was a good redemption race after crashing out last week, but unfortunately the streets of Salvador bite again.
You almost wonder if it would have been more beneficial to cop a penalty for pitting while the pit lane's closed to repair that damage, rather than take another lap around this track with your half your aerodynamic package missing. And of course, you look at the rear wing of these Porsche 935s before they fall off the course, they're that massive. It's really a crucial part of these cars' downforce.
Yeah, they are not small, and they are very, very important. And I don't expect that to be the work of a minute fixing that.
He's in the pit lane now, though, and so is Nether. So Nether will be pitting out of second position to take his pit stop at the same time as Sam Smith does. So Sam Smith won't be losing a huge amount of time here, because his closest competition in the race, as it stood, is in the pit lane behind him. Of course, Nether will come out of the pit lane first because he doesn't have any damage to repair. But it will still be Ziras who's leading it the way. He hasn't pitted yet. He's just weaving around behind the safety car at the moment, with Resist a lap down sitting just behind him. And the next person to meet up with the back of this queue on the lead lap will be Madbird.
Yeah, and because these guys were so spread out, it's taking them a while to catch up to the safety car, but they may struggle to actually catch up to it before it goes back in. And Nether and Sam may well struggle as well. Now, Nether is on the move, and he has retained... he has retained... he stayed ahead of Sam. Yeah, that's right, we were expecting that. He's in 4th place. So now Brenton Foley is in 3rd, and Madbird is in 2nd. But still yet to catch up to that safety car. And it all closes up, so... very, very interesting indeed. Nether will be hoping he can catch the back of Brenton Foley before the safety car comes in and mount an attack for a podium position.
It's really hard to put your finger on what's going on in this race at the moment, because you've got pit strategy, which is throwing things all over the place, and safety cars and cars going off left, right, and center. I sort of predicted it was going to happen, but you really don't expect it to be as chaotic as it is, do you?
No, it certainly keeps us on our toes, and the safety car is in. We've got to restart. Ziras controls the pack, and off he goes. Green flag racing, and Ziras sublimely out front now, with Madbird only just catching up the back of the grid just then. And now the gap between Ziras and Madbird is 2 seconds. So Brenton Foley did not catch Madbird before the safety car came in, probably much to Madbird's ultimate happiness. And he still holds a 6-second advantage over Brenton Foley in 3rd place. Nether lost a big chunk of time, 14 seconds, but it might have been more if that had all been under green flag running. And Sam Smith emerged from the pit lane, still on the lead lap. He'll be considering himself quite lucky that he was still able to come out ahead of Resist, who lost a lot of time getting lapped, and is, well, unfortunately for him, 20 seconds behind Nether, and has a big 20-second disadvantage behind him. And got a wing, though. They managed to fix that car, and it should be good as new.
Yep. He's got a new boot lid on that Porsche, and he's got a fire in his belly now, so he'll be charging up, trying to make up as much time as he possibly can onto Nether in 4th position. And he may even get past him towards the later stages of this race. There is under 15 minutes to go, though. Time has been flying. We're on lap 35 as it stands, so 34 laps have been completed so far. Sorry, 35 laps have been completed by Ziras. It is a lap ahead or thereabouts of the car I was looking at the time. So lap 36 at the moment, and Ziras has a gap of 7 seconds over Madbird, who is only now going through that turn 3 place that I thought was going to be a lot more of a prolific overtaking spot, but we haven't really seen much action there at all this race, have we, Stairs?
No, not really. It's, I think, turn 5 been one of the big ones, and turn 6, that curb, seems to have caught out a few people, but not so much turn 3.
We've always talked about some of these circuits in the past having aspects that really trip drivers up unexpectedly, such as the penultimate corner at Brno, some of those concrete walls at Belle Isle, And the list goes on. I think there's another track cut for Ziras. He crosses the line. No, it's the fastest lap of a 1 minute 4.585. So that lap still stands. I guess I'll eat my words.
Great lap from Ziras. He's got an 8-second advantage from what was a 2-second advantage at the beginning of the lap. So Madbird has bled a huge amount of time to Brenton Foley, who's absolutely on a charge right now. Only 2 seconds separating second and third right now. So Foley is making Madbird wee in his pants just a little bit and is very, very eager to claim that 4th place in the championship that those two are currently tied on. Madbird will be hoping in the nicest possible way that Brenton Foley crashes it like Goofball Antics did.
Well, Foley's just got past Roadhog now, so he's clear of lap traffic. The only car on track in front of him that Brenton Foley needs to chase down now is Madbird, and that gap is now down to 2.4 seconds. So that's really closing up. Big wobble there from Brenton Foley, though, and he grazes the wall on the outside of that long right sweeper as he runs down towards the Victoria hairpin. So he's lost a little bit of time there, but not a huge amount, as it looks like Madbird's run slightly wide, and the gap is closing right up between those two. As another fastest lap from Ziras, 1 minute 4.257. Where is he pulling these from?
He doesn't need to. He's got 10 minutes between himself and yet another championship, and his 4th win of the season, more than any other driver in this championship. But gracious me, the battle for second is very much on now. It's right down below a second, separating Madbird in second from Brenton Foley in third. Now, Brenton's had a number of issues this race. Madbird's also had a number of issues this race. But Madbird will be exceedingly frustrated right now that Foley had been essentially brought back into it with this safety car, but has so much more confidence in the car right now, pushing. It's
really a sight to see the sheer differences between these two cars. The paint looks pretty similar, but you'll see Madbird is a lot more of a composed driver, doesn't oversteer it too much, keeps the 4 wheels pointing in the same direction. And behind him, you've got what looks like a jalopy with a missing bonnet, sliding all over the joint, matching the pace very well indeed. He's got a much better line through the hairpin, I think. Oh, he's almost having a look up the inside on the exit of that corner. That's not going to work out too well for him. They're going to be line astern as they run down towards the chicane. There'll be no passing happening here, but there's a big curb cut for them both. I think they may just be exploiting the limits of these curbs now. The more they drive over them, the more they realise exactly how far they can go over these curbs. So that's really every 10th counts, and you get a lot of tenths out of those curbs in those chicanes if you are able to cut them in just the right way that you don't get a penalty. But this is the spot I was talking about. Brenton's having a lunge. He's not close enough.
And they're dropping 3 seconds a lap to Ziras, who's checked out. And, well, what did he have on his shopping list? A championship, please. He's very much on his way to securing yet another one. And whose car? Was that Ziras's? No, it wasn't. There is a bit of bodywork on the track, but it didn't belong to Ziras. I didn't just give Ziras the curse.
Confirm that belongs to Resist.
So Resist, currently the first man 1 lap down. Just a bit unlucky.
Oh, he's out of the race. Resist is out of the race.
Oh dear, that's unfortunate. That's 3 DNFs in a row now. Is that another safety car? No, it's just a local yellow. We're still watching the battle between Brenton Foley and Madbird, second and third, as they drag race down, and Madbird prevails. But for how much longer? Because Brenton Foley is all over the back. He's got up the inside. Madbird turns in, probably didn't know he was there. He still manages to get through. There's bumping and barging. They'll be absolutely loving it, or they'll absolutely be hating it, depending on which one prevails. This is for 4th in the championship, currently tied on 101 points apiece. Whoever wins this battle wins 4th place in the championship. And for the 2nd season in a row, Madbird is embroiled in a battle that looks set to go right down to the wire.
That's such a tricky spot to try and pass, because you've got that long right sweeper before you jump on the brakes into a tight left, so you can't really get a look up the inside, because the inside is the outside before you get to the corner. So it's not really as much of a passing opportunity as I thought it was going to be, but it's not the only place around this track you can do that. Brenton Foley is all over the back of Madbird. They're making their run down towards the hairpin, which is where he's going to have a look, I'm sure, is quite far back, so I don't think he's going to get it done this time as Rhodey pulls off the track in front of them as lap traffic causes a brief local yellow flag, so that could have proven to be very costly if one of them passed under that local yellow. But they are still line astern. Brenton Foley's close, but he's not close enough. Oh, he's having a look actually.
Carried so much more speed through that chicane. He's got more confidence in the car, and it's a repeat from 1 lap ago as they go side by side through turn 1, and somehow both emerge from the exit of turn 1, both facing in the same direction.
Brenton Foley's much closer this time around than he was last time, so he might even have another look at this corner. Yes, he does. He's on the brakes. No, he still can't get it done.
That was a remarkable pull-out maneuver that somehow Foley managed to achieve without pit maneuvering Madbird. Much probably to Madbird's immense relief, he still holds on to second place, but through these corners, there's really not much Foley can do. He just had to regroup on the previous lap, but he absolutely launched it through the chicane, and it looks like through the chicane and into turn 1 will be Foley's best opportunity. He's a little bit far back, a little bit further back than he was on the previous lap. And he will try again coming out of turn 5. Madbird wants a nice clean exit, doesn't want to lose any time spinning the rears up. Watch them through the chicane though. Very, very different approach. Madbird, I wonder if he's on a warning. Manages to... Oh no, they spun it around! Foley spun it around! Foley will let him go. You absolute... Oh, no, and he's Madbird's reversed. Thought he lost his wing for a moment. Oh, and they've blocked the track now.
This is not going well at all. There'll be a safety car for sure at some stage. There's 4 cars on the track.
No, they haven't got away with that one. Oh, messy. Let's catch a replay there. Foley, I don't think he was far enough alongside. He pit maneuvered Madbird. They couldn't do it 3 laps in a row. It was a miracle that it didn't happen before that. But Foley looks like Foley tried to sneakily get away. I don't think he would have used that opportunity to pass Madbird, because he almost certainly would have copped the penalty for that. But then Madbird, sort of in his haste to block Foley, reversed into the wall and lost part of his bodywork. I thought for a moment it was his wing, but it was just a rear quarter panel. And, well, the positions remain second and third somehow. Such was their gap, but it's brought Nether back into contention here, and a safety car with 6 minutes remaining in this race.
I'll tell you what, it's not a very easy track to redress on, and I think both those drivers will have realised that now is a very messy incident. And Ziras is being slowed down at the moment behind the safety car. He's doing what I believe is 60 kilometers an hour. I'll just double check that for you. You know he's doing about 100. The safety car is around the back part of this track at the moment.
Looks like 60.
But he's 40 seconds ahead of Madbird as it stands at the moment. I'm not sure how much time he's actually going to lose.
Yeah, they may not actually catch the back of them, but all that time they spent stationary, even if they don't catch the safety car, has played Nether into this battle, and he could be in with a shot now of taking a podium. In fact, Nether might be Madbird's ally and Foley's enemy here. If Nether gets past Foley and not Madbird, then Madbird's got a bit of a buffer, but of course that's reading things into it that happen 6th, 7th step along the line. We're only on about step 1 or 2 right now, and these two fighting so hard, probably harder than they normally would over this position, because there are points on offer for whoever finishes ahead, and whoever finishes ahead in this battle finishes ahead in the championship.
Sam Smith coming to the pits now during the safety car period, because he is missing a front bumper this time. So I'd say he's got caught up in another incident somewhere, and he's got a little bit more damage to repair. So Sam Smith well and truly out of contention for this race, unfortunately, which is a shame given how well he was able to charge up through the field after that disastrous qualifying attempt in which he lost it through a track cut at the end of the lap. But now Madbird is only 10 seconds off the back of Ziras, so he might be right there by the time this race gets underway, but there's a lot of lap traffic to contend with.
Yeah, I don't think he'll be worrying about Ziras too much. He just wants to keep Foley behind him and get his second podium finish of the championship. It would also be Brenton Foley's second podium finish so far. And Madbird second place would also be his best result. And his other podium back in Belle Isle third. They've caught the back of the pack, and so now tensions rise as they follow the safety car around at a much reduced pace, and we gear up for a 3-minute sprint to the line.
There are relatively short safety car periods in these races, so I'd hazard a guess and say the safety car will be into the pits at the end of this lap, which is just one corner away, of course, the pit lane departing off at the chicane. So all the cars are lining up now behind the safety car. We've got a few cars from... Oh, Madbird is really stalling there. He's really creating a big gap between himself and...
Yeah, he doesn't want to get caught up behind the back markers. Safety car's in. Ziras bolts behind him. A bevy of back markers, which Madbird manages to negotiate. He gets past Bagsy, he gets past Decimage. Oh, and there's contact in the background between Bagsy and, I think it was the wall actually. Brenton Foley has managed to get through as well, and Nether is also in the hunt.
Ziras has well and truly bolted. The gap was almost up to 5 seconds already on the run down to that first major braking hairpin. There's another yellow flag somewhere. It's a local one.
It's a back marker getting out of the way, I think.
It's Pablo,
might have been Pablo? Anyway, it's
Pablo,
cleared.
So that's clear now.
So Nether now having a look up the inside of Brenton Foley for third place. He can sniff his podium. He's been in with a shout of a podium the last 2 rounds, and could it be third time lucky for Nether? And Brenton Foley gets a little bit wide through the turn 4 sweeper. It gives Madbird a little bit of breathing space, and Decimage is, sorry, not Decimage, Nether is up the inside. Terrific maneuver up turn 5, and Nether up into the podium positions is now running in third.
Brilliant move there from Nether. That did not look like it was on at any point. He was so wobbly on the brakes on the run into that corner. I thought he was going to overshoot and go right into the runoff for sure, but he kept it on the inside, and Foley was not able to get back past. What an incredible block pass from Nether there. Let's see what sort of pace he can carry through the rest of this race. Can he make it up into second?
Well, Foley could fight back too.
He certainly could. This is going to be a very interesting battle. And Decimage is sitting in 5th, although he is a lap down, so he's not able to get mixed up with these guys. There is an entire lap between him and all the cars in front of him. So it is a 3-car battle for the podium spaces at the moment. And if Ziras, for any reason, makes a mistake, he will be out of the championship contention, because those 3 cars behind him, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, will relegate him to 4th position if he loses just 10 seconds of time. And that means he'll lose the championship by what I believe is 2 points. So I don't think that's going to happen. Ziras has a cool, calm head. He knows how to steer a car around safely. Here comes Nether.
Here comes Nether. He's going for second place. Madbird was a little bit slow off the hairpin, and Nether has, well, he gave Madbird a bit of a gap there and took it away because he was a lot slower than Madbird through the chicane, and that's put Brenton Foley right back on the rear of Madbird. Both these Ford Capris limping to the finish now. They probably have a bit of damage from that incident, but Nether, fantastic restart from him, getting 2 positions, putting himself not only on the podium but up into second place, and you can bet that Porsche will be very hard to pass in the remaining moments of this race.
Just makes you wonder how well Sam Smith will be doing if he didn't have that damage earlier on to the front bumper, because he still pitted at the same time as Nether did, and they would have come out relatively equally on track, and he would have been getting mixed up in this battle for the podium spots. So he is still down in 7th position at the moment as a result of all the damage he had to fix. That's taken a huge chunk out of his lap times. He's already down a lap to the rest of these guys as a result of that. So massive amount of time he had to spend in the pits, and now Nether has already pulled a gap of almost a second over Madbird in 3rd position. So Nether's looking pretty safe and secure as it stands as the timer ticks down to 0. Ziras is on lap 48, which means this will be a 49 lap race.
Yeah, it looks like he's just come across the line not too long ago, as now we've got Nether, Madbird and Foley coming across the line through turn 1 now, and Foley gets all out of shape, somehow manages to hang on to it. Madbird once again would have been looking in his rear vision mirror thinking for sure that Foley was going to spit it out into the wall like we saw a few others do earlier on. Foley was in second, 3rd, 4th. Now he's going for 3rd and dives out of that one. Lots of feinting to the inside and to the outside, which will be very, very distracting to Madbird. Foley with another moment on the exit of that corner. Nether is checked out as well. So Nether, very much with the pace, is in 2nd place and looks set to stay there.
Yeah, this is music to the ears of Nether. He's got a gap of 3 seconds to the cars behind him as a result of their constant continuing squabbling for 3rd position. And Brenton Foley is
last lap.
Brenton Foley's car is just so nervous through that fast right-hand bend before the hairpin. He can't really get much done at that point of the track. And if Madbird's clever, he'll just keep his head. He won't look in his rearview mirror at all, because this is his podium spot to lose. It's Madbird currently sitting in 3rd.
Oh,
Doing a great job of it, but Brenton Foley's right there. Oh, surely not a repeat. Nope, they keep it nice and clean this time. They don't want to be making that mistake again.
Big moment there for Foley. He got all sorts of out of shape through turn 1, but somehow he's still got the same gap. And that is what is so infuriating for Madbird. He's still actually in with a shout to get the overtake done at the next corner. Madbird will be making that car as wide as he possibly can. They're 15 seconds behind the leader, who's only got a few more corners remaining until Ziras comes across the line as the champion. Madbird now, what happened to Foley? Foley's had a moment, he's dropped off, and it looks like that's it for Madbird and Foley if they both keep it straight. It's the final couple of corners now for Ziras. He comes around turn 5. He's just got the chicane to negotiate, and he will win this race. He will win the championship, the most unlikely of championships, coming from behind after crashing out of the first round, and Ziras is the champion.
Great result from Ziras. Well done. He is the ARW Series champion once again. He did not finish the first race of the season, as we touched on earlier, and that put him on the back foot to start with, but he's able to claw that gap back, and at the very last race, he has won the championship by a margin of what I think is 9 points. Nether has crossed the line in second. Fantastic result. That's the best result we've seen from Nether in ARW for quite some time now. Madbird crosses the line in third to take the final podium spot, and Brenton Foley's had a bit of a moment on the first corner there after crossing the line in fourth. But your top 3 race sitters at the moment are Ziras, who wins the race and the championship, Nether, who finishes a sensational second, and Madbird, who's on the podium once again in third.
Wow, that was just a sensational result. Obviously, hugely disappointing for Goofball Antics, but I think when he looks back, he can be very pleased of the first 9 rounds of this championship. It just didn't come together for him in the end, but my goodness, Ziras will be feeling unbeatable now. He can win from that position. That's absolutely remarkable.
There you go. That'll be a massive bolster for his confidence in whatever races and championships he has coming up in his future. Of course, we'll have ARW Season 9 at some point not too far away once we figure out what circuits and what vehicles we'll be using for that championship. And of course, we've got the ARW Suzuka 3 hours that's not too far away. But let's go back to the Salvador circuit. Let's go back to what's happened today. What we've seen is, due to Goofball's unfortunate accident early on in the race, is Ziras has come from behind. He's absolutely Stephen Bradbury this championship, and he's taken it out in sensational fashion. Well done, Ziras.
Absolutely. 100% agree. Well, let's have a bit of a chat to our newly crowned champion, defending champion once more. What an unbelievable championship, and you didn't lead it through any point of the entire series apart from after the final round. Tell us how it feels.
It's positive and negative, I guess, because honestly, I think Heathy really deserved it after his run of podiums throughout the whole season, and for it to be pulled back on the last round just by him crashing, it doesn't feel right. But at the same time, like, after Watkins Glen, I started picking up places and just stormed to the end. So, an interesting championship overall.
Absolutely, a championship of 2 halves as well for yourself, with just 1 podium in the first half of the series, and you weren't even off the podium in the second half of the series, grabbing your first win in round 6 at Montreal, and only being beaten in Algarve, essentially in the back half of the series. So congratulations, and onwards and upwards.
Thank you.
Well, let's turn our attention now to Nether, second place man in this race, and I'm sure you'll be richly pleased with that result. After knocking on the door of a podium in the last few rounds, your pace has certainly improved towards the back end of this season. Well done.
Thank you very much. And yeah, you're right. The last couple of weeks for me have probably been the best part of my season. Knocking on the door, getting involved in some good battles, 2 of them with Foley. And this one, I think the safety cars sort of fell our way tonight. Without them coming out where they did, I wasn't able to recovery drive that after making a mistake on lap 2. So thankful they fell where they did, and that it was a good battle right at the dying laps there.
Very much so.
It was great to watch you progress throughout the season, Nether. Of course, you had a little bit of a shaky start with that DNF first race out. Didn't have some fantastic results until the latter stages of the season. Was it just a matter of getting to grips with that Porsche 935? Because we have seen it's quite a tricky car to handle.
You're right. It's probably a combination of 2 things. Confidence was one. I didn't think the setup was really much of an issue. Didn't really have to deviate too much from stock apart from just the gears. But confidence certainly was a thing. And looking at the likes of Sam and Berto and how they were going about handling the Porsche and making so much lap time. It sort of does do a lot for your confidence when you're trying to work out why you're so much slower than them. The second part of it was putting some personal issues behind me, or doing my best to put some personal issues behind me this year, away from the seat. And I think I'm on the way to getting rid of those personal issues, and that sort of has done a little bit for my uptick in form as well.
Well, it's definitely paid off. You've got a second place finish to cap off your season. Well done, Nether. A fantastic result from you. And now we turn to Madbird, who is back on the podium after a podium-less streak that stretches all the way back to race 2 at Belle Isle. So, welcome back, Madbird. How does it feel?
Pretty bloody good. I wasn't really expecting to be anywhere this race. I was sort of on the very edge of being able to no stop, which I don't think we'll hear from him. So I wanted to say that Roadhog managed to no stop with full boost in that Celica race. So that's an impressive effort. I didn't think I thought I might be marginal on a no stop, but then when the safety car came, I just decided to throw myself in and fill myself up for the rest of the race. And I ended up not needing to stop again, but my rears were bloody. Upset is a light word to describe how they were feeling by the end of the race, I think. So it was a bit of a task trying to keep old mate Foley behind me.
It looked like it. The second series in a row now where your battle with another driver has come down to the wire in terms of the championship. So you would have obviously been aware that you and Foley were tied on points going in, so it was a straight fight, and whoever finished ahead would finish ahead in the championship. So it wasn't just the podium that was at stake, it was also the points.
Yeah. Towards the end, when I was running in second and he was running in third, I was like, in my head, I'm like, all right, so if I finish second, but if I finish third and he finishes second, does that still give me enough points to get ahead? And well, wait, no, Madbird, you idiot, you're tied on points.
A lot more straightforward than the Caterhams with the.
It was a lot
counter.
more straightforward. So I wasn't trying to head maths so much this time around. But yeah, it was incredible battle with Foley all the way to the line, and it's been like that a few times this season. So I had to take my hat off to my Capri bro for giving me some exciting racing. Absolutely.
And just tell us about that last incident at turn 1 there. It looked like he was up alongside, not quite enough, pit maneuvered you, and then you were trying to block him potentially, or was that just a bit of a moment in panic, I suppose, to try and get back running?
It was the previous couple of laps he was strong through that last chicane, and he was always trying to go up my inside through turn 1. So I made a conscious said to myself, I'm going to go inside to defend it next lap, and then I forgot to do it, and then I remembered, and I thought I'd left myself enough time. I didn't realize he had like a nose just up next to me, so that was probably half a dozen of one, 6 of the other in terms of whose fault it was or anything like that. So I don't feel too bad about it, especially since I came out ahead, I guess. But it was a bit frustrating at the time, and I think that took a fair bit of life out of my rear tyres. But hey, it is what it is. Close racing.
And with that final safety car, Nether, obviously seemed to be the more grip at the time and a bit more pace in that Porsche blasting past. No thought of keeping him behind?
I thought about it, and then as I was thinking about it, he went past me, so I didn't have to think about it for very long.
Very good. Well, congratulations on 2 podium finishes in this series and your 4th place in the championship neatly secured. Goofball Antics, will just give him an opportunity to say a word or two if he'd like. Commiserations, mate. You've been absolutely the class of the field right up till tonight, and it must be quite difficult right now.
My biggest disappointment is not finishing on the podium. I really don't care about the championship. Some people might say, the pressure got to him. Other people might say he's not good enough. Some people might hypothesize correctly that I looked in the rear vision mirror at the wrong time and just went too deep into that chicane and as soon as I heard those wheels locking, I thought, shit, I'm done. And that was seconds before I hit the wall. So, sorry, I just realized what I said. So it was just lack of concentration. Like I'm just more disappointed I didn't do a whole season on the podium. But otherwise, I'm not bothered.
Well, don't let your results from one race paint the picture of how you are as a driver, because like you said, you did finish every single other race so far up to that point on the podium. You finished second in the championship by a gap of only 11 points to Ziras, who is obviously one of the most seasoned veterans and one of the fastest drivers in the field. So I think, and we all think, you can definitely hold your head high after this season, mate. Well done.
Thank you. Yeah, best of the rest. I'm pretty awesome, aren't I?
Very good. And well, I think we've got quite a few awesome drivers. It's been an awesome series with a number of different winners so far, and also some more awards just in the final moments of this series to award. The drivers during the week have been given the opportunity to vote on a number of awards to be awarded after the series. Of course, the votes occurred before this race, so nothing that happened tonight was taken into consideration. But let's quickly run through who those awards went to and what they were for. So the first one of those awards was for the most improved, and that goes to Resist, with number of strong performances knocking on the door of a win at times this series. So huge congratulations to Resist on a very good season. Brenton Foley wins Best Livery for his Stairs Noises PBF Send It car. I can't actually recall what that stands for in its full glory. Cleanest Racer goes to Goofball Antics, and richly deserved as well for Proto Anomaly Racing. Very, very clean racer indeed. And also most consistent driver, which tonight notwithstanding is, I think, still true. Most consistent driver for Goofball Antics. So congratulations on that one. And best sportsman goes to Sam Smith. Always very, very happy to get involved in a battle, and richly deserves that one as well. So huge congratulations to all of those award winners. We wish them all the very best in the next series of Apex Rearwing. And of course, our next big event, Matty, you mentioned the 3-hour Enduro at Suzuka next month on Saturday, the 15th of September. We'll see you then. Bye for now.